Tom Hanks, movie star, two-time Academy Award winner, America's Dad, Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient, and a movie contracting genius? Business Insider compiled a list of the top 25 highest paid movie roles of all time, and Tom Hanks made the list twice. I went ahead and changed the list slightly and added years to the movies that were released and exported it to Excel here. We can see here that Will Smith secured the top spot at $100 million estimated pay for Men in Black 3 in 2012. And Emma Stone, only one of 3 females to make the list, shocking, came in the 25th spot with a cool $26 million for 2017's La La Land, the movie that got completely gypped for the best movie of the year in 2017 at the Oscars.
Moonlight, you guys won Best Picture.
But what are the main takeaways of this top 25 list? Well, for one, Netflix is paying so much money to these actors. 6 of these top movies were a result of Netflix deals highlighted in red. But that's besides the point. Outside of the absolutely absurd payouts all these actors received, there's one common thread for those that made the list. The main takeaway is that the majority of actors that made the list negotiated some sort of back-end agreements with the studios producing the films. These actors took a risk and decided to receive a portion of box office earnings instead of their traditional salaries. Of course, there are a few exceptions here on the list. Many of these actors secured multi-movie deals. For instance, Keanu Reeves made a deal for $250 million for a 3-movie Matrix trilogy, and Adam Sandler scored a 4-movie deal with Netflix, also securing $250 million. But not including movie sequels or multi-movie deals, Tom Hanks is one of only 4 actors that landed in the top 25 list more than once. With Saving Private Ryan and Forrest Gump, he joined the likes of Will Smith, Johnny Depp, and Leonardo DiCaprio to secure the 16th and 6th seed. Pretty good. Pretty good. But no Will Smith numbers. However, one thing stands out here. These 2 movies came out in the 1990s. More specifically, 1994 and 1998, making it the second and third oldest movies on the top 25 list behind only Jack Nicholson's 1989 Joker. And in a lot of ways, Tom Hanks and Nicholson paved the way for these absurd payouts. They set a precedent. So to get a better scope of whose payout was highest, we need to adjust these numbers for inflation. I just went ahead and used the CPI inflation calculator here to calculate the buying power of these payments. And once we account for inflation, Tom Hanks takes home the second spot for the highest payout for a single movie on record at a staggering $124 million, behind only Keanu Reeves' payout for the Matrix trilogy. How did he do this? How did Tom Hanks secure the bag? Well, to know this, we have to go back in time to 1993. At the time, Tom Hanks was one of the most in-demand actors of the 1990s. He had just begun transitioning his career away from comedies like The Burbs, Big, and Joe vs. the Volcano, and towards more dramatic roles. In 1993, he had just come off Philadelphia, which he would later receive an Academy Award for, and huge blockbuster success, Sleepless in Seattle, one of my personal favorite rom-coms. After John Travolta, Bill Murray, and Chevy Chase turned down the role, Tom Hanks reportedly accepted the role within 90 minutes of reading the script. They had begun filming in August 1993. The original production budget for the film was $55 million, which seems high, but was pretty standard for the time. However, Paramount, the film's production studio, began to doubt the financial success of the movie. In a lot of ways, a film about a special needs character was already made with Rain Man a few years earlier, and they doubted there was a market or demand for that type of movie again. Soon later, Paramount dropped the budget by an estimated $10 million. This was money they needed, primarily for special effects. Apparently, napalming an entire forest and having Gump meet 3 different presidents adds up. At this point, Tom Hanks and director Robert Zemeckis, an equally successful movie-making icon whose name should sound somewhat familiar with one of the greatest trilogies at that time, Back to the Future, decided to take a cut of their salaries for points at the box office. To me, this seems like a no-brainer. I mean, come on. Zemeckis earns millions of dollars at the box office with his movies he directs, and Tom Hanks has proven his ability to get people in the theaters with Sleepless in Seattle. So they gave the bird to the studio, Paramount, and decided to make the movie they wanted to make. In one specific circumstance before wrapping up filming, they needed one more shot of Forrest running across the country, a scene that's now infamous. The whole scene was estimated to have cost around $1.5 million. Paramount wanted nothing to do with the scene and wanted the team to cut it. However, Tom Hanks, likely knowing the future success of the movie, reportedly paid out of pocket to get the critical scene produced. And boy, did it pay off. The movie ultimately ended up grossing $678 million in the box office to go on to become the 3rd highest grossing film of all time, behind only E.T. and Jurassic Park. Forrest Gump went on to net 6 Oscars, including a consecutive Academy Award for Tom Hanks, becoming one of only 2 actors to receive the back-to-back win. But arguably more impressive than the Oscar wins is the estimated $65 million Tom Hanks walked away with from this movie. Well, at least to me. What was this deal that Tom Hanks received? Well, it's called a first dollar deal, and it's one of the rarest deals in the movie industry and increasingly becoming more endangered. The way that it works is that the actor receives a substantial cut of the studio's box office receipts, regardless of the picture's performance. They are essentially the second party to receive income from the movie after, of course, the movie theaters are paid their cut. Seems to make sense, right? But why is there such a significant difference to first dollar versus general profit sharing agreements? Well, let's dive into the math. We know that the movie made about $680 million in the box office. A conservative estimate, let's go ahead and say that after the theaters took their share of ticket sales, there's about 50% left for the studio. So that's $339 million. Now, under a first dollar deal, this is where Zemeckis and Hanks would take their cut. In this example, let's go ahead and say that there's a 20% cut under a first dollar deal. Of course, these are just estimates, but that indicates that each one of them pulled in about $67.8 million. Now, under a profit sharing agreement, they wouldn't be paid out until the production studio broke even. Now, an easy way to do this calculation is by taking the production budget and using the rule of 2.5, where we take our production budget and multiply it by 2.5. This is typically a better indication of the budget for the movie because it accounts for marketing and distribution costs. So with the listed production budget of $55 million, our hypothetical total budget would be $137.5 million. After subtracting out our cost from our studio cut, we have a rough estimation of profit of just over $200 million. If Hanks secured a 20% profit sharing agreement here, he'd likely only be entitled to $40 million. Still a healthy chunk of change, but significantly lower than what he received under the first dollar deal, and that's because it's taken out before the costs related to the film. What's great about a first dollar deal is that the actor can receive a large payout even if the movie isn't profitable. Now, of course, this was just an example, but in reality, this movie reportedly lost $62,403,581 due to costs related to marketing being higher than what they originally anticipated. Yes, you got that right. A movie that made Tom Hanks and Robert Zemeckis each, at the very least, over $40 million, lost $62 million for the studio. It looks like they ultimately did give Paramount Studio the bird by pursuing the first dollar deal. Somewhat unfortunately, the author of Forrest Gump had pursued a profit-sharing deal of approximately 3%. Ultimately, he was not paid a single penny for this film. However, he later wrote a sequel to the film that the studio paid some 7-figure sum for, so he wasn't completely lost. Well, it's clear that Tom Hanks loves this deal-making strategy. In fact, he replicated it for another movie 4 years later, Saving Private Ryan, where Spielberg and Hanks reportedly split a 40% first dollar deal for the film, making Hanks a reported $40 million in 1998. But not everyone is eligible for this type of deal. Most inevitably start their career sharing in a small percentage of profits or no contingent compensation whatsoever. The more the actor is in demand, the more power they have at the negotiating table. Now, these deals are becoming less and less common because it typically results in the studio losing money, as in the case it was for Paramount. A more recent example of a first dollar deal is with Cameron Diaz, who negotiated a first dollar deal for Bad Teacher and netted $42 million. Leonardo DiCaprio is also famous for this type of deal. He had a first dollar deal with Inception, reportedly making him $50 million. Lastly, Sandra Bullock, who not only secured $20 million base pay, but also a 15% share of the box office receipts, ultimately netting her an additional $54 million for a total compensation of $74 million for one film. Who will be the next to score a big first dollar deal? I'm not sure, but my money's on Tom Cruise's new Mission Impossible movie, set to be released later this year. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you.